You're lying in darkness on your wedding night, dressed in your husband's tunic, your hair shorn to stubble like a criminal's. Outside your locked chamber, voices chant words you don't understand. You've never seen your husband's face in daylight. You don't know his voice, and in 3 hours, he'll leave this room and you won't see him again for weeks, maybe months. This isn't Greece. This isn't Sparta. This is Rome, the civilization that gave us law, order, and the very concept of republic. But in the bedrooms of the eternal city, behind closed doors where marble statues couldn't see, Romans practiced rituals so invasive, so systematically cruel, that modern historians initially dismissed the accounts as anti-Roman propaganda. They were wrong. Before we step into these forbidden chambers, I have to say, it genuinely amazes me that people from every continent are curious about these hidden histories. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Now, let's unlock the doors they sealed shut for 2,000 years. The year is 195 BCE, and Rome is witnessing something unprecedented. Thousands of women flooding the forum, blocking streets, and surrounding the Senate in protest of the Lex Oppia, a law dictating what they could wear, how much jewelry they owned, even where they could travel. But this revolt was only the surface of a deeper tyranny, one that reached into bedrooms. Rome's archives, marriage contracts, divorce records, cases of bedroom violations reveal a civilization that weaponized intimacy itself. These weren't customs. They were policies of control designed to preserve male dominance through surveillance and law. At the heart of it was manus, the principle transferring a woman from her father's hand to her husband's like property. Cum manu made her her husband's possession. Sine manu left her torn between father and spouse, loyal to neither, free in appearance, yet bound by law. Even love, in Rome, existed only under male supervision. The Romans took this system one step further, with a practice so calculated it reveals the true purpose of their marriage laws. The tutela mulierum required that all women, regardless of age or marriage status, remain under the guardianship of a male relative their entire lives. A 60-year-old widow with adult children still needed a male guardian's permission to conduct business, sell property, or make legal decisions. The law explicitly stated that women required guardianship because of the lightness of their minds, treating female intelligence as a permanent disability that justified lifelong control. But these legal structures were just the framework. The real control happened in bedrooms, where Roman law penetrated with shocking specificity. The second rule governing Roman intimate life involved the most invasive verification system ever documented in Western civilization. The Romans didn't trust that marriages would be properly consummated or that wives would fulfill their reproductive duties without elaborate surveillance mechanisms built into the wedding ceremony itself. The pronuba was a respected matron chosen to oversee every Roman bride, ensuring the wedding night met legal and social expectations. Her role went beyond ceremony. She physically led the bride to the bed, arranged her position, and sometimes stayed to confirm consummation. In Lucretia's case, witnesses, including her pronuba, later testified in court about her wedding night's details. The next morning's oferea brought inspection. Female relatives examined the bedding and interrogated the bride. Their findings, recorded as evidence of virginity and consummation, could later determine inheritance rights and the marriage's legal validity. But the Romans went even further with practices that make modern audiences physically uncomfortable. In certain regions, particularly during the late Republic, some families required that a male witness, usually the bride's father or brother, remain within earshot of the bridal chamber during consummation. The official justification was preventing fraud or substitution of the bride. The actual effect was creating a psychological environment where the most vulnerable moment of a young woman's life became a witnessed performance rather than a private experience. The third rule reveals something even more disturbing about Roman bedroom control. The Julian laws, enacted by Augustus Caesar in 18 BCE, didn't just regulate marriage. They mandated it and criminalized specific bedroom behaviors with penalties that included exile, property confiscation, and execution. The Lex Julia de Adulterius made adultery a criminal offense prosecuted by the state, not just a private family matter. But the law's definition of adultery applied exclusively to women and the men who slept with them. Married men could sleep with unmarried women, prostitutes, or slaves without legal consequence, while married women faced death or exile for any extramarital contact. Here's where Roman law turned terrifying. Husbands were required to divorce wives suspected of adultery, and fathers were legally bound to kill daughters caught in the act. Failure to do so meant prosecution. The state had invaded the home, turning love and loyalty into instruments of law. The case of Pompeia, Julius Caesar's wife, shows this brutality. After rumors of impropriety during a sacred ceremony, Caesar divorced her without evidence, declaring, "Caesar's wife must be above suspicion." In Rome, mere accusation, not proof, was enough to erase a woman's life. But the Julian laws contained an even more sinister provision that historians often overlook. The Lex Julia de Maritandis Ordinibus required that all citizens between certain ages marry and produce children, imposing financial penalties on those who remained single or childless. Widows and divorced women had to remarry within specific timeframes or face legal consequences. The state was literally forcing people into intimate relationships and reproductive activity, treating Roman bedrooms as resources in demographic management programs. The fourth rule made every Roman bedroom a sacred, monitored space. Unlike Greek fertility rituals, Roman religion focused on detecting impurity and preventing spiritual defilement. Each home's lararium housed the lares and penates, household gods, believed to witness all intimate acts and punish any sexual misconduct within the family's walls. This created a psychological environment where couples felt constantly watched even in complete privacy. The gods became bedroom surveillance agents who couldn't be excluded or deceived. Women particularly bore the weight of this religious scrutiny because Roman religion treated female sexuality as inherently polluting and dangerous to divine order. The cult of Vesta, which required aristocratic girls to serve as virgin priestesses for 30 years, reveals how deeply Romans had embedded sexual control into religious practice. The Vestal virgins faced execution by live burial if they violated their chastity vows, a punishment so brutal it was specifically reserved for this sexual transgression. The Romans believed that a Vestal's sexual activity would bring divine wrath upon the entire city, treating women's bedroom behavior as a potential weapon of mass destruction. But here's the detail that historians find most disturbing: the method of execution. Vestals convicted of breaking their chastity vows were sealed in underground chambers with a small amount of food and water, then buried alive. The Romans refused to directly kill them because spilling Vestal's blood was considered sacrilegious. Instead, they created a death that could take days of suffocating darkness and starvation. A punishment so horrific, it served as a warning to all Roman women about the consequences of unauthorized sexual activity. The fifth rule exposes the economic machinery beneath Roman marriage, the system that transformed intimacy into a transaction. Marriage, in Rome, was rarely about love or partnership. It existed to secure property, cement alliances, and transfer wealth between patriarchal families, with women serving as the legal and biological conduits of inheritance. Central to this structure was the dose, or Dowry the cornerstone of every Roman union. Unlike in some cultures, the dowry never belonged to the wife. Her husband controlled it throughout the marriage, but was legally required to return it if the union dissolved unless she was found at fault. This loophole encouraged corruption. Many husbands fabricated accusations of adultery or misconduct to claim their wives' dowries permanently. Cicero's letters recount the tragedy of Sempronia, a woman accused of infidelity on the flimsiest grounds, speaking to a man in public. Her husband divorced her, kept her fortune, and swiftly remarried a wealthier bride. Branded adulteress, Sempronia became unmarriageable, surviving only through reluctant relatives' charity, a fate every Roman woman feared. The manipulation began even earlier. Through sponsalia, or engagement contracts, girls as young as 7 were betrothed for economic gain. Before they understood marriage, their futures and their bodies had already been sold. The 6th rule governing Roman bedrooms involved the state's direct intervention into reproductive decisions through laws so invasive they amount to forced pregnancy mandates. Augustus Caesar, concerned about declining birth rates among aristocratic Romans, enacted the Lex Julia et Papia laws that penalized childlessness and rewarded large families with legal privileges. But these weren't gentle incentives. They were coercive policies that stripped childless adults of inheritance rights and social standing. Under Roman law, even the most intimate aspects of a woman's life were governed by the state. Childless widows, for example, were barred from inheriting their deceased husband's property. A woman's legal and economic standing depended on her reproductive record. Those with fewer than 3 children in Rome, or 4 in the provinces, were denied the right to inherit or to pass property to others. The Roman government had inserted itself into the household and the bedroom, transforming women's bodies into instruments of demographic policy. Fertility was not a private matter. It was a civic duty. To enforce these laws, Rome developed a chilling bureaucratic apparatus. Citizens were required to publicly register births, marriages, and deaths, creating an early intrusive form of population data collection. Officials could examine these records to identify childless couples and impose penalties. A couple's bedroom productivity was no longer private, but a matter of legal scrutiny and public record. One case, recorded in 27 CE, exposes the cruelty of this system. Antonia, a wealthy Roman matron, inherited her brother's estate after his death. Yet, when state auditors reviewed her record, they discovered she had borne only 2 children, 1 fewer than the required 3. The court ruled that she must forfeit 2/3 of her inheritance to the imperial treasury. Her body's failure to meet state fertility quotas cost her a fortune. The judgment was not an exception. It was a warning to all women that their economic survival depended on reproductive compliance. The 7th rule of Roman bedroom law cuts even deeper. It obliterated the concept of consent within marriage. Roman jurisprudence drew a sharp distinction between public and private sexual violations. While a free woman could, in theory, prosecute a rapist outside marriage, no such protection existed against her own husband. The act of marriage itself was treated as a lifelong contract of irrevocable sexual consent. The jurist Ulpian wrote plainly, "A husband cannot be charged with compelling his wife to intercourse, for by marriage she has consented to the use of her body." This was not cultural naivety, it was deliberate legal design. Marriage, in Roman thought, erased a woman's autonomy, making her body a permanent entitlement. Roman court records contain tragic evidence of what this meant in practice. Women fleeing violent or coercive husbands could not claim sexual abuse as justification for divorce because, under law, such abuse did not exist within marriage. Wives who resisted their husbands could be punished for disobedience, their defiance reframed as a moral failing. The Roman bedroom was not a refuge. It was a stage where the law itself enforced submission. Even beyond marriage, the system extended its reach through manus iniectio, a legal mechanism allowing creditors to seize a debtor's wife or family as collateral. Women could literally be claimed, detained, or sold to satisfy their husband's debts. The home, supposedly sacred, became an annex of the marketplace, its inhabitants treated as transferable assets. The eighth rule reveals how these laws were enforced, through surveillance. Rome's obsession with moral control bred an entire economy of informants. Neighbors, slaves, and household staff were expected, sometimes required, to report bedroom violations. Those who remained silent could be punished. Those who informed could be rewarded. Professional accusers, the delatores, made fortunes by exposing or inventing moral crimes. They cultivated networks of household slaves eager to trade their masters' secrets for money or freedom. Tacitus records how this system destroyed lives, including that of Poppaea, Sabina's first husband. When Emperor Nero desired Poppaea, accusations of adultery conveniently emerged against her spouse. Paid informants testified to his supposed affairs, clearing the way for Poppaea to divorce and marry Nero. Truth was irrelevant. The machinery of surveillance could always produce a witness. By the time of the empire, Rome had perfected a kind of moral totalitarianism. Every citizen's bedroom could be monitored, legislated, and punished. The ninth rule reveals a final unsettling layer, the ritualization of this control in physical form. Roman bedrooms often displayed the fascinum, a large phallic amulet believed to protect against infertility and evil spirits. Far from being discreet charms, these symbols were massive and conspicuous, dominating the walls or hanging above the marriage bed. The message was unmistakable. The household's fertility was a matter of public importance, guarded by divine imagery and social expectation alike. What began as superstition became an extension of state ideology. The fascinum served as a constant reminder that even within the supposed privacy of the marriage bed, the Roman state was watching not through eyes, but through law, religion, and ritual. The Roman bedroom was never truly private. It was a political space where the empire's deepest obsessions, power, property, and control were written onto the human body itself. More disturbing was the tintinnabulum, wind chimes featuring multiple phallus shapes with bells, which Romans hung in bedrooms and believed would ward off harmful magic while promoting fertility. The archaeological record contains hundreds of these objects, revealing how thoroughly Romans had saturated even the most intimate spaces with symbols designed to regulate sexual activity toward reproductive outcomes. But the strangest bedroom practice involved the custom of the lectus genialis, the marriage bed that was never to be used for anything except procreation. Wealthy Romans maintained separate sleeping arrangements from their marriage beds, which were reserved exclusively for attempts at conceiving children. This practice physically embodied the Roman belief that intimate relations had one legitimate purpose: producing legitimate heirs. Any other use of sexuality was considered frivolous or dangerous. The 10th and final rule reveals the ultimate purpose behind all of Rome's bedroom laws: maintaining class distinctions through rigorous control of reproductive mixing. The Lex Julia de Maritandis Ordinibus explicitly prohibited senators and their descendants from marrying freedwomen or women associated with the theater, considering such unions so contaminating that resulting children couldn't inherit their father's status or property. Romans didn't just regulate who could marry whom, they used bedroom laws to enforce an entire social hierarchy that treated intimate choices as potential threats to civilization itself. The penalties for violating these class-based marriage restrictions reveal how seriously Romans took bedroom-based social control. Senator Titius, lost his Senate seat, property, and citizenship rights after marrying an actress, despite her being a free-born citizen in good standing. The marriage was declared legally void. Their children were classified as illegitimate, and Titius was exiled from Rome. His bedroom choice had destroyed everything, not because of any harm caused, but because he'd violated the invisible boundaries that bedroom laws were designed to maintain. But the cruelest aspect of these laws was how they treated children born from prohibited unions. These children were legally classified as spurii, illegitimate, regardless of whether their parents had married in good faith. They couldn't inherit from either parent. They couldn't claim their father's social status. They were marked from birth as evidence of bedroom violations, treated as walking proof that someone had broken the sexual social order. In 168 CE, a Roman bureaucrat named Cornelius wrote a letter that survived in Egyptian papyrus archives, documenting his personal experience with these laws. He'd fallen in love with a freedwoman and married her before learning that the marriage violated class restrictions. When authorities discovered the union, Cornelius faced a choice: divorce her and acknowledge the marriage had been illegal, or face prosecution, loss of his position, and classification of his 3 children as illegitimate. He chose divorce. In the letter, preserved for 2,000 years, he described watching his wife pack her belongings while their children asked questions he couldn't answer. "The law entered my bedroom," he wrote, "and found it unsuitable." That phrase, preserved on deteriorating papyrus in a museum collection, captures everything about Roman bedroom control. These weren't abstract regulations existing in legal codes. They were invasive forces that physically entered the most private spaces of human life, measured what they found against rigid standards, and destroyed anything that didn't conform. The archaeological evidence sits in museum collections today. Marriage contracts specifying bedroom obligations, divorce records citing consummation failures, court testimony about wedding night surveillance. The Romans documented their bedroom control with the same bureaucratic thoroughness they brought to military logistics and architectural engineering. And in that documentation, we find a civilization that had achieved something remarkable and horrifying: the complete transformation of intimate human relationships into instruments of state power and social control. When Vesuvius buried Pompeii in 79 CE, it preserved more than walls. It froze a world where Rome's bedroom laws ruled daily life. Archaeologists uncovered tintinnabula still hanging, lararia watching over beds arranged by strict tradition. Among the ruins, a half-finished letter survived. A woman pleading with her brother to stop her husband from divorcing her for failing to conceive. Her final words ended mid-sentence, silenced by ash. Pompeii's beauty endures, but beneath it lies Rome's darkest legacy control, reaching even into the bedroom's last breath of privacy.